Welcome to today's episode of the Good Grief Believer podcast. My name is Julie Craig. I'm the host, and today I am with one of my favorite people in the whole world. Her name is Daria Brekke Craig, and we are in her home in Elverum, Norway, where my husband and I came to visit my son and our little grandkids. So this is my daughter-in-law, and truly one of the most remarkable women I've ever known. And I'm so grateful that she's the mother of my grandchildren and the wife of my son, who I love. But Daria, or Dasha, as we call her, is her nickname, has had a remarkable life, very interesting experiences. And I'm excited that you will share and tell us a little bit about your dad. So why don't you introduce yourself, give a little background.
Okay. My name is Daria, or Dasha, as you call me. I am 31 years old. I was born in Russia, and I am Russian originally. My parents were 20 when I was born, and they stayed together for about 5 years before they got divorced. Or when I was 5, they got divorced. And when I was 10, my mom married a Norwegian man, and we moved to Norway. And I've lived in Norway ever since. I went to Norwegian school, and I got my education here. And I went to medical school here. In the middle of medical school, I went on a mission, which was something that I had thought about for a while, but then backed out of when I started medical school. But yeah, in the middle of medical school, I decided that that was something that I really had to do. And I served my mission in Ukraine, Russian speaking, which was, a walk in the park because I already spoke Russian. Of course, the mission is never a walk in the park, but that's where I met my husband, Ben, who was your son.
Who you thought was too young and too American at first.
Yes, because he is about 3 and a little bit years younger than me. And I thought, and he was 18 when we met. I had just turned 22, and it was a big age difference. And I thought, I definitely thought that he wasn't serious about, being interested. But he was. And here we are about 7 years into our marriage. We have 2 little boys. And that is, I tell people that is the souvenir that I brought from Russia.
You brought them.
Some people bring vyshyvankas, some people bring food. I brought a husband. Yeah.
It's such a sweet story, really, because Ben was quite good at track when he was in high school, and he was able to be on the Brigham Young University track team. He signed with them, then served his LDS mission with the intention that he was going to come back to BYU and run, which he was on the team that first year, but that year he spent learning Norwegian. So right. with the intention to take the language exam for Norway and finish his education in Norway, which he did, and you guys got married, and his dad and I totally supported that, because when you see your child with the person that is just the absolute best person for them, all you want is for them to have that life. And luckily I'm able to come and visit. Oh, Ben just walked by. Ben's working from home. We're in the house, and he's hearing all these nice things that we're saying. I always tell people that my son was so smart. He found the best person. So thank you for sharing that. And so after you and your mom moved to Norway, did you see your dad much? Because he stayed in Russia, right?
Yeah. So when When my parents got divorced, my mom actually says that my dad was more involved in my life after the divorce than before.
That's not uncommon. I hear that.
And we used to spend, my mom's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember spending a lot of weekends with my dad. And I remember him taking me with him wherever he was going and, just hanging out. And uh, then when we moved to Norway, my dad obviously thought it was difficult for that I would move. I was at the time um, he had started dating someone that had oh no, that was later. Never mind. But obviously he thought it was hard because I was his only child, and he really loved me, and I always felt like he loved, and I always felt wanted. But he did not want to be in the way of me moving to Norway. He understood that that was the best decision for me in order to be with my mom, um, and my mom obviously wanted me to come here, and so he had to sign, papers to let me leave. And I know of other couples and other kids where that was a big deal and a big problem, but my dad was never difficult with that. He just wanted me to have a good life. And so we moved, and after we moved to Norway, we went to Russia at least once a year. I think maybe sometimes it would be maybe a year and a half in between. And my dad sadly never got to visit us here, but we went to Russia, and my dad would, because I'm from a city about maybe 6 hour drive from Moscow. When we would fly into Moscow, and my dad would come pick us up, all of us, and drive that drive all alone, and drive us back, even with my stepfather. And he, even though they never spoke the same language, he tried to communicate with him, and it was a fun interaction.
What was your dad like? Tell me about his personality.
He
and what was his name?
His name was Alexander.
Okay.
Or Sasha would be the nickname. And he was a very fun person. I mean, he was very optimistic. He could make anything into a joke, for good and bad, right? And he was fun to be around. He always, figure out fun stuff to do. He would take us, to like parks and playing, or us, because at some point he had other kids, my half siblings, and he would want all of us to hang out together. And he would always, if I needed to do something while I was in Russia, he would always take me, he would drive me. And he would, he just, he was loving, and he was kind, and but he was very fun and funny. He was a car mechanic, and he was, that was his education. He was like a car engineer or something like that. He worked as a car mechanic for a while, and then he also like sold cars and kind of supervised other mechanics. But that's what he spent most of his work life doing, is working with cars.
That's fun.
And then he remarried several times after my mom, and he had a stepson who he adopted, who was my stepbrother, and then a daughter after him, and then another daughter, and then a son.
Okay.
So he has, technically he has, let's see, 4 biological kids,
and an adopted, and then
another,
son.
So 5
children.
Yeah, 5 kids in total.
Wow. So how long ago did he pass away?
4 years, I think, now. Yes, it is 4 years. It was 4 years this March.
Can you talk about that experience, like, how did you find out? Did you know that that he was going to pass? Were you in Norway or in Russia? What happened?
And my dad was very young. My dad was 47 when he passed.
That's very young.
So this came as a shock and was not something I expected and at all. My dad smoked and he drank, so it wasn't like he was super healthy, but he was healthy enough to live a normal, active life. And a couple of days before, or maybe the day before he passed, or a couple of days, I remember talking to him on the phone, and we didn't talk on the phone a lot. We texted a lot. But that time I remember him calling, and he was in the hospital and he was connected to an IV, and he said that he wasn't feeling well, but he was, getting better and he was in pain, but that was fine. Yeah. I think that was actually the day before he passed. And we were here in Elverum. I was working that day, and I remember waking up from a text from his wife, who was, his widow, and she just texted that he had passed. And I remember the bed that I was sitting on, and I remember Ben also waking up, and I just stayed in bed, and Ben kind of asked what was wrong, and I told him that my dad had passed, and I was just in total shock. And I was in such shock that I got dressed and I came to work. And I sat there because we have a morning meeting, and they went through all the patients and everything, and for the things that had to happen during the day. And when that meeting was over, I stayed and I waited until, and obviously I couldn't pay attention very well to what was happening.
Right.
And I stayed and I waited until most of the doctors had left. It was just my boss left, and another of the attendings was still left. And I told my boss, I'm going to need some days off. And he laughed a little and said, "What do you mean?" And I started crying and I said, "My dad passed today and I'm sorry. Can I get some days off?" I think it was a Thursday. I asked for the day off after, and I asked if I could just take like a vacation week after that, because the week after I would have a week off. So I was hoping that, I would be able to kind of cope with things through during that time. And he just said, "What are you doing here? Why are you even here? You could have called, you could have texted, like, you don't have to show up for work when things like this happen." And he just sent me home and said, "Of course, we'll figure things out. Just go do whatever you need to do. And, we'll talk later." Yeah. And because he passed away in Russia, I don't have a Russian citizenship anymore. So I had to figure out a way to get to Russia in order to go to the funeral. Not only that, this was 2 weeks after the war broke out. And this is the beginning of the war in Ukraine.
Oh my goodness.
So, the war broke out the 24th of February. And he died on the 17th of March. So yeah, like 2 or 3 weeks, probably after.
Goodness.
So everything was still super uncertain. We had heard, we knew people that had fled Kyiv or that had fled Ukraine already. And it was just such a chaotic, and flights weren't going between Oslo and Moscow. There were barely any flights.
The West had cut off Russia.
Yes. And I didn't know, how was I supposed to get to Russia? How, was this even safe?
Right.
And at the time I was pregnant with our first son. And I remember, calling my mom, telling her, discussing this with Ben, just trying to figure out how we would handle this. And my dad was very good at taking us to the cemetery.
Really?
He would, yes. And he would take us as kids and me to every time because I have some relatives that are buried in the countryside. And he would, whenever we went to the countryside to visit family, he would take us to the cemetery. And he would say, "I hope that someday you will come visit me at the cemetery." You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So I knew that it was important for him that I go.
Yes.
And we hadn't at the time, because of COVID and because of, other things, we had not seen each other for maybe a year and a half or maybe 2 years. Because of COVID. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Because right before COVID, me and Ben went. Luckily, we were able to go together right before COVID. So what was that, 2019?
Yes.
So Christmas of 2019, January 2020, we went to Russia together. Ben was able to meet my dad and all my family in Russia. And then COVID came. And then because of COVID,
was that the first time Ben had met your dad?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that is the first time.
Wow. Okay.
So I just knew he wanted me to go. And I remember my mom freaking out. She was so scared.
Yeah.
Ben was scared too, obviously.
Yeah, because Russia was at war. You didn't know. If you went there, would you be able to come back?
Yes. I read, the recommendations from the Norwegian government. No unnecessary trips to Russia. No tourist trips. Only uttermost necessary trips. And if something happens, you need to let the Norwegian government know that you're going. And it was crazy. But I remember opening the scriptures, because I do that sometimes, and ask questions and open random pages. I believe in that.
Yes.
And I to this day, I did not write down what I opened, and I cannot find it. But what I got out from the scripture that I read was that you have suffered enough for now, and that nothing bad was going to happen while I was there. And that, and from that, I felt like I would be well, my baby would be well, my family would be well, and I would not get stuck in Russia. So I decided to go, and I called the embassy, and within, let's see, this was Thursday. That Thursday we went into Oslo. Friday, I was at the embassy, dropping off papers. Mm-hmm. And not only did I have to gather all of my papers, including the fact that I'm not a Russian citizen anymore, right. I had to get a death certificate, which I didn't have at the time. So I had to get a note translated from the hospital in Russia saying that my dad was dead. And
you couldn't translate it, right? Did you have to have it officially translated?
I think I ended up having someone translate it, and I don't exactly remember, but I couldn't find my birth certificate. So I found an old birth certificate that was like a notarized copy. It was just insane finding all these documents in one day, and getting my bank to approve travel insurance to go into Russia when it wasn't allowed to go to Russia technically. That was also insane. I called someone and they said no. Then I called someone else and he said yes. So, and he wrote the paper, and it was just full of, blessings and just things falling into place. And I wasn't able to travel until Monday, but that Saturday I went and picked up my visa, and the consular working at the embassy, he didn't even open the gate for me. He came through, he came onto the gate, and through the bars, he handed me my passport, because there was police outside of the Russian embassy. There had been, people demonstrating and, threats for the Russian embassy. So he came out, gave my passport, and went back in. And I think I have that passport still, but in that passport, it says the reason for my travel was the death of a close family member. So, and then I got tickets and I traveled through Istanbul. And for people that know geography, that is in the wrong direction. Usually the flight between Oslo and Moscow would take 2 hours, 3 at most. And I traveled for, I think, almost 24 hours, because the layover was like 10 hours or something like that. So I had to travel from Oslo to Istanbul, and then from Istanbul to Moscow. And then from Moscow, I had to take a train, and I couldn't use my card in Russia, because
your credit card?
Yes. Any card that was Norwegian could not be used in Russia. So I had to use, I had my mom find all the rubles that she had.
Oh my goodness.
And then I brought euros, and then my brother, he exchanged, just privately exchanged money for me, because there was no way for me to exchange money. There was no way to use my card. And literally 2 years before that, when me and Ben went together, I paid with my card everywhere.
Yes.
Um,
Oh my
so that was,
gosh.
that was insane. And getting tickets to the train, I could not get tickets on Russian website. I could not open Russian websites at all. My brother had to do that for me. He had to get a train ticket for me, and he wrote my name wrong. And it was just,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So I had to pay there and try to change my name. And
Do you
it
think
was
your dad
chaotic.
was kind of giggling about all this?
Yes, I think he did. I think he did.
But he was probably so proud of you for trying
Yeah.
so hard.
I think so. And I think that in all of this awfulness, there was an irony to it, how my dad chose to die. I mean, he didn't choose to die, but, at the least convenient time possible, when it was impossible to get there. And, but it all worked out, and I went and I came back. And, yeah.
Well, and something that strikes me really is, I mean, this was a bad time. If people go back and remember just how, I mean, it was so hard to travel during the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
So difficult. And then when Russia invaded Ukraine, that was world-shattering news.
Yes.
There was everything to Russia got immediately shut down.
Yes.
No flights. Nobody could go to Russia. I think I remember you saying that you could either fly through Syria or Istanbul. Is that right? Or
no, Serbia.
Serbia. That's right. It was Serbia or Istanbul.
Yes. Or you could technically go through the northern of Norway and go through that part that borders Russia. But it felt so uncertain, because you had to get to the northern of Norway, which takes forever, by the way.
Right.
Norway is small but long. And then you had to travel by bus to the border, and then by bus from the border to the nearest city. And then from the nearest city, I still had to get tickets. Yeah. Somehow I didn't have enough money to just cash out. Yeah. And I don't know if anyone would have accepted euros or how it would have been. So that just the way that
Istanbul was the most certain.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And for reference, the flight tickets to Moscow used to be like as cheap as any flight ticket in Europe. Maybe, at the time, maybe $150 one way tops.
Yeah.
Maybe 200. But I think I paid over $1,000 to get there.
Yes.
At least. Yes. I think it was even more, because it was it was a full flight. There were a ton of people. And yeah, it was a very weird time to travel.
So every single person that made it easier for you to get there, to be there for your dad, was a blessing. And that's like, when Steve passed away, I can remember one time with one particular bank, you have to call like every single bank, that we had joint accounts, and tell them, my husband passed away, and you have to send them death certificates. And it's just so much minutia and logistical nightmare, doing all of these things. And every time I would be asked to do an extra step, just like it added to the burden, it added to my grief. And I can remember one time, just in exasperation, with somebody saying, because they said I had to call again and, call this other number. And I said, every single time I have to do this, it just it's so painful for me. It reminds me of why I'm doing this, why I'm widowed. And if you could just make this easier for me, it would mean so much. Mm-hmm. And I do remember one time where somebody passed it on to his manager and said, please just take care of this for this poor lady. Mm-hmm. So it makes me think of like when you had to call and the first person said no, about the one who you called back. You just want to get that person on the phone and say, do you know what a difference that made? Mm-hmm. Just anybody who's in a position to make something easier for someone who is trying to take care of a funeral or any kind of issue with that. God bless them.
Yeah, seriously.
Right? I don't know if it's always something that people think about when they're in that situation.
I don't think so, no.
Wow. So, how do you, when you look back, how did you experience your grief? I mean, you mentioned you heard or you got a text. You got a text from your dad's widow, and clearly you went into shock, which you can diagnose, right?
Yeah.
So how do you remember like your grief? How did it start, and where did you see it move to? What was that journey?
I think in the beginning, obviously, yes, it was a shock, but there were so many things that had to be done. So I don't think that I fully grieved until later. I think that my focus went to the practical things, right? Getting a visa, getting flight tickets, getting there, taking care of my family members, going to the funeral. While I was in Russia, doing the things that I had to do while I was there, because obviously every time I'm there, something has to happen or something needs to be done, and the people I need to see, and so I was focused on that. And then by the time I came home, while I was in Russia, Ben actually ended up getting us tickets to go to Portugal. And we went together because I had a week off after. And we had our sort of baby moon. And that was very nice. And we got to just spend time together and enjoy, our time together. And I am, how awful it may sound, I am blessed with a man that has lost his father too.
Right.
So he knows what I'm going through, and he definitely can relate. So that was very nice. I really appreciated that time. And after that, I just went on with life and I worked. And I think that grief has come in bits and pieces, because it's one thing to lose someone that you are with every hour of the day, and a totally different thing when you live in different countries, when you speak on a regular basis, but like I said, more texts, sending pictures to each other. And because before we would see each other once a year and spend a lot of time together, but then after, like I said, COVID and then the war, even though that wasn't a long time, but he wasn't there for every aspect of my life, right? So the times where I have grieved are the times where I have felt like he should have been there. Or the times where I wish I could have asked him something. I wish I could have discussed this with him. I wish I would have been able to share this wonderful news with him. It's hard that he was never able to meet my kids, and religiously, we believe, and I believe that maybe they have met before they were born.
Right.
And that he was able to meet them, or that he sees them now.
Right.
But it's hard that physical connection isn't there, that there's no, talking to him over FaceTime, or there's no going to Russia to visit him, that they won't be able to see him, what he was like, to meet him, to know him, and for him to be able to embrace them. And he loved kids. He wasn't always good with boundaries, but he was so fun. And I remember, because my youngest brother, he is, let's see, how old? He was 5 when my dad passed.
Oh, wow.
Or he was 4, so turning little. 5. And I remember when we visited, I think it was when both me and Ben visited, or maybe the year before when I visited alone. I remember him being about 1 year old and my dad giving him a hammer. And I was like, what in the actual heck, Because my dad was going to hang up a picture or something, and the kid wanted a hammer, and he had us putting him on top of a cabinet, sitting there with a hammer, trying to nail, put. He's 1 year old, He's 1 year old. Just say no. Don't give him the hammer.
And can I just mention, you're a pediatrician. Like,
right?
Like
right.
you're going, developmentally, this is wrong on so many levels.
And he would like let him walk around with that hammer at home and even damage things. And I'd be like, and I would think that kid was
chill.
Yes. And I would think, that kid is so spoiled, and we would go to the store and he would ask for things or toys or anything. And my dad would always get him something, something cheap and little. Yeah. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, that kid is just going to be spoiled. That's not how you should be raising kids. This is before I had my own kids. Right. But now those are the things I remember, Right. I remember him taking me to McDonald's and getting that Happy Meal, so he probably couldn't afford it on a regular basis. Or getting the little toys at the store, or taking me to the local park where you could ride certain, kid friendly, attractions. Yeah. But the fact that he spent his time and money on that, those are the things I remember, even though maybe in the long run, a kid would be spoiled if that's how you treated them. So it's, it's when those things happen, when things, and I saw that was one of your questions, actually, when things where I think that my dad would have done this, or my dad would have liked this, or I would have needed help from my dad when it comes to this, or he would have been so happy for me if he would have known, or he would have been so happy for my kids if he would have known that, or if I would have sent him these pictures or these videos, or they were able to talk to him. Those are the times where I grieve in bits and pieces. It's not, I don't think you ever get done with grieving when you lose someone. But for me, it definitely has been very compartmentalized.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's interesting is I've tried to interview you several times, but it seems like now is when it felt right for you. Do you know why?
I think that before I still think maybe it's I, compared to the way that I have grieved personally, I have not grieved much publicly.
Okay.
I think that a lot of my grief is personal and within myself. Mm-hmm. And it has felt weird to share some of these things because they are so personal.
Right.
But, and maybe also because I have felt like I have not really grieved, because your podcast is about grieving well. Have I even grieved well? What is grieving well?
Right.
I don't even know, because I keep grieving here and there and not really, I feel like I still have not fully coped with the fact that my dad is dead, and we make jokes about it. We make jokes about it at home, because sometimes we'll be like, oh, I can't ask my dad because my dad is dead, Yeah, exactly. And which is in spirit with the way he was, because he would totally have said those kind of things. I feel like.
Right. But, I couldn't even say the word dead or died for a few years, actually.
Really?
After Steve passed away, I couldn't say Steve is dead. It still feels a little, I don't know, it's distasteful.
Yeah.
To me, even though it's reality. Yeah. I don't like it to say he passed away or he passed on.
It's a lot more soft.
It is. It's like, well, all he did was cross from one existence to another.
Right.
But, and for me, I grieve him the most, I think, when I'm with my kids. I've grieved him since I've been here. Mm-hmm. Part of that is because, I'm sad that Ben doesn't get to see what his dad would be like with his little boys, which is what you miss with your dad,
and I think
right?
Ben is very sad about that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting that you both lost your dads really pretty close together.
Yeah, within a year of each other.
So, how do you plan to bring your dad and Ben's dad into your son's lives? What's your thought about that?
My dad was good at bringing me into my siblings' lives.
Really?
As far as I know, because we lived apart for many years.
Yeah.
And then he had
and
kids.
You were older than them.
Yes, much older. But every time I came, he would make sure that I spent time with all the kids because the kids had different mothers, and it wasn't always easy to meet with all of them, but he at least tried to make sure. And sometimes it was out of his control, and there are one of my sisters I have not seen for a long time, but if he was able to gather all the kids together, he totally would.
Wow.
And I know that he had pictures of me at home. And I know that he, like when I sent pictures, he would show them to my siblings. And something my dad was big on was birthdays.
Okay.
And something that I associate with him a lot. That's also one of the reasons why this timing is the way it is, because his birthday is on April 6th. So for his birthday this year, I felt like what I should do was do the interview.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Because I feel like what can I do to remember him? How can I remember him? He was big on dates, big on birthdays, and he remembered all the birthdays. And he would text me on my mom's birthday and say, "Today's your mom's birthday. Remember to wish her a happy birthday." Yeah. I'm like, "Thanks, Dad. She's my mom. I know you guys have not lived together for 20 years, but he still would. He still would text me. I would be an adult, I
love that.
And my mom would be with someone else.
Right.
And he's with someone else, but he still would text me and, and he would remind me of my grandpa's birthday. And I understand that because he was his dad, but,
I love that.
Yeah. And of my siblings' birthday. He definitely would remind me of my siblings' birthdays. Oh, I need to wish them a happy birthday. And, I think, what can I do? It's his birthday. What can I do to remember him? And this year, that's what I felt like I should do. But I honestly am not sure. I think Ben is better at talking about Steve, your husband, your late husband, and telling them about what he was like and who he was, and Grandpa Steve,
Or like we'll listen to a song and he'll say,
"Yes,
your Grandpa Steve loved this song."
Yes. Yeah. And I'm working on it, and I hope that I will be able to introduce him or help them to know who he was more. At the same time, I represent a lot of the things that, he was.
Yeah. And
I feel like I have inherited a lot of his good qualities, probably also bad. And I feel like I try to implement some of the things that were important to him in the way that I live my life and the way that I am with my kids.
Like what, for example?
Like birthdays, like remembering my kids' birthdays and my siblings' birthdays, and kind of trying to make something out of it and make it a special day. And maybe I don't want to spoil my kids, but I don't want it to be, no, we can't afford that, or we can't have that because,
right.
Delayed gratitude.
Right.
Sometimes I'm just gonna, or I do sometimes, no, let's go out and buy that toy that you wanted, and,
yeah.
do that thing that you wanted. Let's go to that park, even though I don't want to go to the park, but you want to go to the skate park. Fine.
Right. And your dad would have done that.
Yes, my dad definitely would have done that. And when my kids get older, I hope that I can be as, as loving, as helpful as he was when I needed to have something done. And it will be like, that will be my priority, to help them get something done or drive them somewhere
I love that. Especially because you didn't grow up in the same home with him for a while, but he clearly was a huge presence in your life.
Oh yeah.
And that can be a really hopeful message, I think, for people who've lost somebody that is really important and special, to know that, that person's existence, it's written on your heart.
Oh yeah. And you're definitely shaped by the people that you're with, and the close people that you're with, and especially when they're your parents. And no matter if you want it or not, you are going to be shaped by your parents.
Yeah.
Both by the personality that you've inherited, but also by the way that you were raised. And one thing my dad also was good at is keeping in touch. I wasn't always as good at, replying, or I would sometimes think it's a little annoying that he would text me several times a day, and, and he would send silly jokes and be silly. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, he's so silly. But of course I miss that now, right? You don't know what you have until it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you have that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I wish I had been able to meet your dad.
Yeah. You guys probably had a lot of fun, even though he spoke almost no English.
Right. We would have sat there with, that's what happens sometimes. Yeah. We have this really fun interaction where, there'll be English beat going on in one corner and Russian going on in the other corner. And you and Ben both do a pretty good job, or your mom does a really good job of making sure that everything gets translated.
Yeah.
And, we know it's.
Yeah.
But I picked up a few fun things like Pekka.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's fun. Have you ever encountered somebody being insensitive to your grief, or seen it in a different circumstance?
Yes, I definitely have. Not many instances, but there are a couple of instances that I remember. One thing is, and I can appreciate that people aren't always themselves when they drink, but this was right after the funeral. We were in the like countryside where my grandpa, so my dad's dad, lives, and he some of that family, and we were sitting around a table, and so it would be my aunt's half aunt's husband. He started discussing the Ukraine war.
Oh,
and not only the
right after the funeral.
Yes, this was the day after the funeral, or maybe it was even the funeral or the day of the funeral. I don't remember, but I think it was the day of the funeral, because the funeral was during the day and then this was at night. It doesn't matter, but they drank because that's what Russians do. They drink for everything. They celebrate everything. They grieve everything. There's always alcohol involved, and it's rare that it isn't. So it was, and I sitting there because my dad's drinking definitely contributed to his death. And I just cannot comprehend how you can toast with alcohol for someone who died, not only because of, but
a contributing factor.
Yes, what alcohol is the contributing. You can toast for his, for his well-being, or for someone's well-being with alcohol. I do not understand that.
Right.
Anyway, so here we are sitting, and he starts talking about these things, and he starts talking about how the West sees the Russians as bad, and discussing things like that. And I don't exactly remember what he said, but I said, wow, how can you talk to me in this way, which is by the way, disrespectful, but also, I don't want to talk about this. I came here to grieve my dad. My dad is dead. That is why I'm here.
Right. Right. I want to talk politics with you.
Yeah. And I think my aunt kind of made a comment and said, calm down to him.
Right.
But I thought that was very disrespectful. So definitely not a topic you want to, you don't want to discuss politics at someone's funeral or a couple of days after. That's not what you were thinking about.
Right.
I think another thing that I don't think is disrespectful, but it is hard for me to listen to people majorly complaining about their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, and it's fine to complain, it's fine to discuss things, but especially if people are complaining in a way where they do not speak with their parents anymore, or if they want to cut them out from their life in some manner or form, or they seem very unappreciative of the fact that their parents are still alive. Mm-hmm. I have said in a couple of instances, at least your parents are alive.
Right.
Because not both of mine aren't,
right.
Or one of mine isn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I understand that people need to complain, but I think it definitely puts things in perspective when you've lost a parent. And for however much my dad tried to keep in contact with me, I still feel regret about not calling him more, not talking to him more, not spending more time with him. I know that I wasn't able to visit him, but I wish I would have been. Right. And if I had the opportunity, I wish I would have. I hope that I would have gone, because it's hard. It's hard losing someone on the, either on the other side of the world or even closer, but without being able to see them in the last hours and the last weeks and the last months, last years. And just feeling like you wish you would have said things and done things differently. And so that's definitely something that I've learned, is not to take people for granted and say things as they are before someone passes away.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I know, because I think about, both. I mean, Ben was in Norway when his dad passed away in the U.S. And I remember thinking how awful that plane ride must have been for him. And it was during COVID, right? So you weren't able to come, and all of those questions about just how awful, he would have seen his dad more. I think if he didn't live so far away, and then with you, being so far away from your dad, you would have seen if your dad lived in the next town, you would have seen each other more regularly.
Oh yeah, we totally would have.
Yeah, that was so hard. But then I appreciate you bringing that up, because, barring real, actual abuse, it's hard. It's hard when you have lost someone and would just love to see them in all their imperfection. Right. To appreciate someone voluntarily cutting someone out because, we disagree about politics, or we disagree about religion, or they're annoying,
and obviously my dad wasn't abusive, and I understand that there can be circumstances where this isn't the case, that you're cutting the communication because of something silly. But I think I just feel like a lot of times you can work through things, and it's better to work through things, or at least keep some sort of contact still, because sadly you will regret it when
I think that's true.
Comes. And because me and my dad, we had our differences, and when the war broke out, that was difficult, because the things that were portrayed in Russian media, they were about how good it was that Russia invaded Ukraine, or maybe that Russia had not invaded Ukraine at all. They were just helping, the people that were already there. I don't know what it was. How it was
They had a narrative.
They had a different narrative, and my narrative was obvious. I have friends in Ukraine. They're telling me this. I know that this is true. And my dad would be like, I don't think so. And we would just kind of stop talking about it because it was impossible to discuss. But I'm glad that we still, kept in touch those last weeks, even though maybe I was very unhappy with the way that he thought and handled the war and his thoughts on the war.
Yeah. Wow. Well, is there anything that you would want to share with your relatives that are there about your dad, your beliefs or thoughts about life, death, resurrection, anything like that?
I don't remember if what I said, because I definitely remember going to the funeral and us talking a little bit about it. I think that, my brother just wanted to support me, and his relationship with dad was a little, it wasn't perfect either. My sister was a little young, but I think originally she didn't even want to go to the funeral, but I think I pushed her a little. And we ended up going. One of my sisters, the other, wasn't even there. But that, I don't know if that was, I don't think it was her decision. She was a little too young to make that decision. And my youngest brother wasn't there, and that was because he was so little, and his mom really struggled telling him. I think it took a while before she told him that dad was, in fact, dead, and he wasn't coming back because she was talking about.
Because he was only 5 or 6.
Yeah, he was 4, turning 5.
Oh, so wow! So yeah, how does he even understand it?
Right, and I was very, I told her that, you need to tell him because eventually he's going to figure out eventually, right? And I think she did. But she, for a long time, she said that he was on a work trip and he kept asking for dad, and that was very heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember talking to my family a little bit about, how I believe that this isn't the end, this life isn't the end. And I don't know if that was, I feel like I said what I wanted to say at the time, which was, a little moderated. And because how much do you even, how much information are you even able to receive when you are grieving like that, or when you're in shock? Right. It's not a lot, and like you said, in my profession, when you give bad news, you just need to keep it as short as possible, because people will only remember that first sentence most likely is what they will remember. There's no point in, yes, you give some sort of information, but you keep it short as possible, because the processing comes the next day, a couple of days later, weeks, months, all the questions come up later. But I do believe that, this life isn't the end. And my dad, he, something that, because my mom, she became a member before she met my dad. She was baptized when she was 18, and then shortly after she met my dad. And when they were together, she kind of stopped going to church. And then when I was born, she started going to church again. And because she wanted me to be raised in the church and with the values that brought on. But my dad, he never came to church. He never went to church with us, but he did take us to church. He drove us to church. He would take us to activities. I know that he had come to some activities, not a lot, but I definitely have a picture of him with like a missionary at some, branch activity. And then when I got older, my dad never criticized my faith. He never, we never went into very deep discussions, but we definitely discussed religion, and we discussed, life after death. And I was, uh, I was probably more critical of him when it came to his choices in life than a lot of kids in that part of Europe would have been accepted to be. I remember family members, more distant family members out on the countryside again, being shocked by some of the things that I said to my dad, being very frank about disagreeing with him on things, or disagreeing, with the way he lived his life, including, and, you know, a lot of it limited to drinking and smoking and things like that.
Right.
Uh, and
So they were surprised that you would tell him, I don't think it's good
yes,
that you're drinking. I don't think it's good that you're smoking.
yes, and they thought I was a little difficult, and but he never. I I remember having one discussion where it got a little heated, but apart from that, he never, criticized me for criticizing him. He kind of just, laughed it off a little bit and said that, yeah. It's awful to say, but at some point, I remember telling him that you need to stop smoking or else you will not meet your grandkids.
Oh.
And he didn't, right? But, which is awful to think about it now. Like how, I said that and it became true. But like I said before, I believe that there was a life before this life, and I believe that there will be a life after too. I mean, how else would we be able to handle all of this hurt and all the awful things that are happening in the world, um, let alone our own family, and the people that we have lost. How can it be that we will not ever see them again? I just don't see that being real.
Right.
And I don't see a God wanting, I mean, obviously you have to believe in God first, but I don't see purpose in this life unless there is something before and after.
Yeah.
It's hard to see that there should be purpose if everyone is just going to die.
Right.
And that is the
we're
end.
just randomly here, and then we
Right.
randomly leave. Yeah,
Right.
randomly die.
And I really love our doctrine on families. I do believe that we will see each other again, and that there will be an opportunity to heal what was broken, and to restore those family bonds and strengthen them, and learn even more about each other. Because I feel like when you're a kid, you learn about your parents in a different way than when you become an adult.
Yeah.
And when you become an adult, you start asking questions that you didn't ask before. There are questions that I have now that I can't ask because he isn't here.
Right.
But I'm hoping and I believe that we will see each other again. We'll be able to talk as equals and share, our lives, and that he will be able to meet my kids, and um, I am forever grateful for, Jesus Christ and his sacrifice, and his example, and the fact that he does heal everything that's broken. And I think, and like everyone on this earth, my dad also was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, maybe, or I hope that he is healed now and that he feels whole. Yeah. And the things that were difficult before, the things that are difficult in this life, that he is able to overcome them with Christ. And I, yeah, I really do. I really do believe that he is. He was seeking something. I don't he was never interested in our faith in particular, in the way that, that he wanted to be a part of the church. But he said, I remember him saying like things like, I wish the rest of my kids would go to church because I really appreciate the way you live your life, or the choices that you make. I hope that my kids make the same choices. And I appreciated that, even though, yeah, he never came to church with me. He had a Book of Mormon, and I know that he read a little bit in it, and it was there. He never tossed it or burned it, or
Well, it was special to you, so
yeah.
He probably really respected, and I'm sure he was so proud of you.
Yeah, I think so.
He would have every reason to be. I'm so thankful that you shared with me about your dad. I really do think that he and I would have enjoyed getting to know each other.
Too.
We would have sat there with one of you translating and probably sat and joked around, and and he and Steve probably would have joked around a lot. It sounds like they had a lot of dadisms in common. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And we always end with the same question, which is, what do you think it means to grieve well?
As I said before, I don't know. I don't know what it means to grieve well. I think the most important thing is that we remember the ones who are gone, but we don't linger on that. That we don't let it stop us. We don't let the fact that they're gone stop us from doing the things that we like and love. But we'll live our life so that we remember, appreciate, and respect them, and are able to focus our lives maybe towards the things that matter most, because we know how short life can be, or how sudden death can be. And that is one of the things that me and Ben often talk about, or mention, is that our focus have shifted after we lost someone very close to us. When I was right before I went on my mission, I lost my grandma, my mom's mom. So I'm not unfamiliar with grief, but that was also a different grief. And she was there, and all of a sudden she wasn't. But she was sick, and it took a while. And that definitely changed my perspective in many ways. But I think us losing our dads changed our perspective even more, and changed our perspective and our direction as a couple, too, in the way I hope it has, and I think it has, and I especially hope that it has, because I don't want their death to be, in vain. In that way.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been a wonderful discussion. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.